the clock is really ticking towards this deadline. And look, you can look at the August the 19th as the first home leg, but the squad registration for Celtic to get these guys in is to register the 25-man squad is actually the August the 13th. That's when they need to submit that squad. And then they've got, I think, a 24-hour buffer before the first game to add an additional 2 players. So it wouldn't surprise me if Celtic submit their squad as it is just now next week in August the 13th, and then they add 2 additional players 24 hours before the game. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. But he's clearly a player that Martin O'Neill wants. He wouldn't have name-checked him otherwise. Like you say, Dan, he name-checked him in January as well. So yeah, I think he's really wanting that deal done, and the Celtic board need to back him.
The other area as well, and you're spot on about the wingers, Ryan, that was the thing that was glaring to me the other night, the need for creativity out wide, albeit Yang, I agree with you, he's come on immeasurably since he first broke into the team. But centre mid, Ryan, I mean, you look at the other night, we've mentioned that if we accept Arne Engels is going, Callum McGregor, I would think, probably is going to stay. It's just a feeling from me. But Martin O'Neill again kind of stopped short of saying that after the game. And then on the bench the other night, Rio Hatate was another centre mid option, more than likely away. And Luke McCowan, who I think is a decent player, but he's a squad player. You're not going to have him starting every game. I mean, I know Mika Bauer has been linked, but to me, I mean, they desperately need centre midfielders as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've this since last season, Dan. I think they're clearly lacking energy in the middle of the park, energy and power, and they just need fresh blood. I think definitely Arne Engels, never till he's going to go. When it's going to happen, but he's not going to be a Celtic player come the transfer window closing September the 3rd. So they'll need to get a replacement in for him. They'll need to get a replacement in for Pillow, who's already out the door. And Rio Hatate is going to be leaving as well if he can get a club. He's submitted he's made it clear to the club that he wants to test himself elsewhere, which is absolutely fine. Celtic got the best out of him, and he's entitled to want to go and have another challenge after 4.5 years in Glasgow. So that's fine. But Celtic players in to replace these guys, and they've got to be again first team ready players as well. And in this current market, you're not going to get a first team ready player unless you're willing to pay the big bucks. So Mika Bauer, he's that's more than a link. Celtic have been in talks with Paderborn over Mika Bauer. As yet, they've not been able to strike a deal. As I say, Mika Bauer's out of contract at the end of next season. Paderborn are back in the Bundesliga, and they're playing hardball, Dan. They're not willing to lose him for £4 or £5 million. I think they're holding out for more. So talks have kind of stalled in that one. And again, how long do Celtic wait before turning their attention to other targets? If they're not going to pay, reach the valuation or come to an agreement, then they're going to have to look at elsewhere, and they're going to have a short list of probably 10 midfield targets, and they've got to start looking elsewhere. But as I say, you're going to need more than Mika Bauer. You're going to need, I'd say, a minimum of 3 midfielders and central midfielders. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd probably agree.
Absolutely. And I know they've re-signed Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain in a year, but looking at Alex in pre-season, I think technically he's still got the ability, but I worry about his fitness. I'm a wee bit concerned by that. I think he looks a long way short of match sharpness. And the whole point of getting him in kind of fairly early was to get him integrated into pre-season and get him really up to speed. But yeah, he looks quite short of match fitness just now, and I know he didn't come off the bench on Monday night either. So Celtic are short in that department, Dan, especially with Paulo Bernardo leaving. So again, they just need to head with signings. They need at least 7 or 8 signings before this transfer window closes. That's the bare minimum, I think.
I was going to ask you that next. I mean, we sit here recording this on the 5th of August. You've rightfully pointed out the Champions League deadline for registering players. But if we take it now, 3rd of September it shuts, so roughly 29, 30 days, you would put it as high as 8 players still needed, 7 or 8 players Celtic still need to sign?
I'll go through it. For me, need a goalkeeper challenging Sinisalo, who I think has been excellent throughout pre-season. I thought he was decent on Monday as well. Safe pair of hands, made a great from the header from Ashley. So I'm happy with Sinisalo in goals. For me, he deserves a chance to keep the gloves, but you can't be relying on Ross Doohan as your backup keeper. You're one injury away from Ross Doohan starting the Champions League qualifier, which that's just simply not a no-go. So I think they still need a goalkeeper in there to replace Kasper Schmeichel. If Alistair Johnson leaves, you need a right back. You definitely need a left back. For me, I still think you need defensive cover, because if Cameron Carter-Vickers, he's been injury prone over the last few years, he gets injured, then you're left with really three senior centre backs. Now, obviously, Benjamin Arthur came in last season, Jemai Simpson-Pusey as well, and they kind of, I know Benjamin Arthur played more than JSP, but they did provide a wee bit of cover and strength and depth in that department. So for me, it may not be a priority, but I think they need another centre back as well. As you said, Dan, I think they need three central midfielders. I think they need two wingers, and I wouldn't be surprised if Martin wants another striker as well. So there's just so much business to be done. And the concern is, we've seen this happen so many times before. The clock ticks, every press conference, we're lucky enough to meet Martin 2 or 3 times a week. Every press conference, he's saying they're getting closer and closer to signings. But last Friday said they were getting closer to signings, and this is Wednesday, the 5th of August. And we're going to be asking the same question again in Friday. And, who knows if Celtic have a player or two in by then. So it must be frustrating, the manager, as well. He's clearly aware of the amount of work that's required. And we've said it before, Dan, but this transfer window was dubbed as, a major summer overhaul. But we've not seen that at all.
Yeah.
All we've seen is 15 players now go out the door and only 2 come in. The arithmetic doesn't quite add up there. So Celtic, I think they're really weak. Outside their starting 11, I think they're weak in pretty much all areas of the pitch in terms of backup options and strength and depth. And that's not going to be sustainable for if Celtic to compete in 4 competitions this season. It's really not. And they need quality in the door. I always say it, but you look at Ange Postecoglou's squad, and 60 minutes he would always bring on 3 subs who would just completely re-energise the team. And it wasn't a drop down in quality or levels either. If anything, they raised the quality. Always thinking like Aaron Moy, and even Wheeler Bad at times coming on, Matt O'Reilly coming on, and Georgios Giacomakis. These are game changers that Celtic had in competing for starts, and if they go out starting, they're on the bench. So that's the level Celtic need to strive to get back to again if they are to become the best versions of themselves that they can be. And I think that's what the fans will be demanding. So I think, for me, my perspective, my concern would be for Celtic is that the longer this window goes on, the more frustrated they get in their negotiations with clubs and struggling to meet the valuation of certain players. You've seen it before, but in the final weeks of the window, are they going to then start to hit the panic button and then move in, sign a flurry of loan players, which just that's not planning for the long term. And to me, that's just smacking of desperation and panic, which we've seen so many times. So, you'd like to think Celtic have got they've got a plan, and they're working on it, and there might be a flurry of new signings between now and the Champions League qualifier, but history tells you that's not been the case.
Certainly doesn't.